Commander Zekthara watched through the reinforced observation window as the latest prisoner was dragged into the interrogation chamber. The human male appeared unremarkable by galactic standards. Average height, no natural armor plating, no venomous spines or acidic secretions. Just pale skin, dark hair, and those strange forward-facing eyes that seemed to track everything with unsettling focus. Subject designation: Human 7734, announced the automated system. Species: Homo sapiens. Origin: Sol 3, commonly known as Earth. The Vorthak interrogation specialist, Grixmol, flexed his forearms in anticipation. His species had perfected the art of psychological warfare over millennia. They had broken the will of countless species across the galaxy, from the proud warrior clans of Kepler 442b to the telepathic scholars of the Andromeda colonies. Each species had their weakness, their fear triggers that could be exploited. "Begin preliminary psychological assessment," Zekthara ordered through the communicator. The human sat calmly in the restraint chair, his breathing steady. He had given his name as Marcus Chen, claimed to be a cargo hauler who had been captured during a routine supply run to the Outer Rim colonies. Intelligence suggested otherwise. The cargo manifest had been too clean, the ship's modifications too sophisticated for a simple merchant vessel. Grixmol entered the chamber, his towering 8-foot frame casting long shadows across the sterile walls. The interrogation chamber had been designed to maximize psychological pressure, harsh lighting, uncomfortable temperatures, and complete isolation from any familiar stimuli. Most prisoners broke within hours of confinement. "Human," Grixmol began, his translator rendering his clicks and hisses into standard galactic. "You will provide information regarding human military positions in this sector." Marcus looked up, seemingly unbothered by the alien's intimidating presence. "I already told your friends out there I'm just a cargo pilot. I don't know anything about military positions." The Vorthak's primary eyes narrowed. Humans were known for their stubborn nature, but every species had limits. He activated the first phase of the psychological assault system. The chamber's walls began displaying rapidly shifting patterns designed to induce disorientation and nausea in most carbon-based life forms. Marcus glanced around with mild curiosity, as if watching an interesting light show. His vital signs, monitored by advanced sensors, showed no significant stress response. "Interesting choice of interior design," Marcus commented. "Very abstract." Grixmol's mandibles clicked in frustration. The pattern system had never failed before. He escalated to Phase 2, ultrasonic frequencies calibrated to cause anxiety and panic in humanoid nervous systems. Marcus tilted his head slightly, like a dog hearing a distant sound. "You know, there's this really faint humming. Is that intentional? Or do you have a problem with your ventilation system?" Behind the observation window, Zekthara's tentacles writhed with growing concern. The human's reaction was unprecedented. Even their most hardened prisoners showed some response to the psychological assault protocols. "Perhaps his species has natural resistance to our standard methods," suggested Science Officer Veltara. "The humans are a relatively new species to galactic contact. We may not have comprehensive data on their psychological makeup." Zekthara considered this possibility. Humans had emerged onto the galactic stage only 50 years ago, and their rapid expansion had caught many established powers off guard. They had proven surprisingly adaptable to various environments and showed an unusual tendency toward violence when threatened. Perhaps they required more direct methods. "Authorize Level 3 protocols," Zekthara commanded. In the interrogation chamber, Grixmol was growing increasingly agitated. Decades of experience had taught him to read the subtle signs of psychological breakdown in his subjects. The human showed none of them. If anything, he seemed to be growing more comfortable as time passed. "Tell me, human," Grixmol said, leaning forward with all four arms braced on the table. "What do you know of fear?" Marcus appeared to consider the question seriously. Fear? Well, I suppose it's that feeling you get when you're not sure if you're going to make it through something. Why do you ask? The Vorthak's secondary eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of confusion in his species. You show no fear responses to our interrogation protocols. This is unusual. Oh, the light show and the humming? Marcus shrugged as much as his restraints allowed. I figured you were just trying to make me uncomfortable. Sorry if I'm not giving you the reaction you're looking for. I used to work construction near a spaceport. After listening to fusion engines cycling up for 12 hours a day, you get pretty good at tuning out weird noises and lights. Griximol retreated to the far corner of the chamber, ostensibly to consult his datapad, but actually to compose himself. In all his years of service, he had never encountered such casual indifference to psychological manipulation. The human seemed genuinely unbothered by techniques that had reduced hardened criminals to blubbering confessions. The science officer's voice crackled through his earpiece. Griximol, we're reading elevated stress indicators from you, but the human's biosigns remain stable. Are you certain the equipment is functioning correctly? He ran a quick diagnostic on his instruments. Everything showed green. The human was simply unaffected. Perhaps, Griximol muttered to himself, it is time to employ more traditional methods. The Vorthak reached into his equipment case and withdrew a sealed canister marked with biohazard symbols. The contents were a masterpiece of Vorthak biochemistry, a fear-inducing compound that worked directly on the nervous system of most known species. It bypassed conscious thought entirely, triggering primal terror responses that had been refined over millions of years of evolution. Human, Griximol announced, holding up the canister. Your species may have resistance to psychological manipulation, but biology is universal. This compound will induce fear responses in any carbon-based life form with a nervous system. Marcus looked at the canister with interest rather than apprehension. Huh, fear gas, right? I've heard about stuff like that, but never seen it used. Does it really work on everyone? The casual question sent another wave of confusion through Griximol. Most prisoners would be begging or bargaining at this point. The humans seemed to be treating this like an educational opportunity. It has never failed, Griximol stated, though his confidence was beginning to waver. He broke the seal on the canister and activated the dispersal system. A faint greenish vapor began to fill the chamber. The gas was designed to be absorbed through both the respiratory system and skin contact, ensuring complete exposure regardless of the subject's cooperation. Marcus watched the gas spreading through the chamber with apparent fascination. So, how long does it usually take to kick in? Griximol checked his chronometer. Under normal circumstances, effects should begin within 30 seconds of exposure. Most subjects showed immediate distress as the compound began affecting their neural pathways. 60 seconds passed. Marcus continued to observe the swirling gas patterns with the detached interest of someone watching clouds drift by. The concentration may be insufficient for human physiology, Griximol muttered, increasing the dispersal rate. The chamber quickly filled with a thick green fog that should have been overwhelming to any biological nervous system. Marcus took a deep breath, sampling the air like someone trying to identify a familiar scent. His expression shifted slightly, not to fear or panic, but to something that looked almost like nostalgia. You know what? Marcus said, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. This actually smells kind of familiar. Griximol's forearms trembled slightly. Familiar? Yeah. Marcus inhaled again, deeper this time. It's got that chemical sweetness mixed with something metallic. Reminds me of home, actually. The Vorthak interrogator stepped backward, nearly tripping over his own feet. In the observation chamber, Zekthera and his staff watched in stunned silence as their most powerful psychological weapon not only failed to affect the human, but actually seemed to improve his mood. "This is impossible," Veltara whispered. "The compound should be inducing massive fear responses. His neural activity should be spiking across all terror indicators." Instead, Marcus appeared more relaxed than he had been since his capture. The small smile had become a genuine grin, and his posture had shifted from alert wariness to something approaching contentment. "Home?" Grixmol managed to ask, his voice distorted by stress-induced vocal fluctuations. "Oh yeah," Marcus continued, seemingly oblivious to the growing panic among his captors. "Grew up about 10 kilometers downwind from a chemical plant. Every morning, you'd wake up to that exact smell drifting over the residential district. Sweet and metallic, with just a hint of that nose-burning sensation." He paused, lost in apparent reminiscence. "My mom used to joke that we were probably building up immunity to everything just by breathing the air. 'Marcus,' she'd say, 'if the apocalypse ever comes, you'll probably be fine as long as you can find a good industrial zone to live in.'" The implications of this revelation struck the observation team like a physical blow. If humans had evolved in environments that other species would consider toxic, if their baseline for normal atmospheric conditions included compounds that induced terror in other life forms. "Shut down the gas immediately," Zekthara ordered, though his voice seemed to come from very far away. "Actually," Marcus said, apparently having heard the order through the chamber's speakers, "would it be possible to keep it going a little longer? It's been months since I've had a good smell of home. Really takes me back to being a kid." Grixmol fumbled with the controls, his hands shaking too badly to operate them efficiently. The gas dispersal system finally shut down, but the damage to his professional confidence was complete and irreversible. In the observation chamber, Zekthara stared at the human who was now humming what sounded like a cheerful tune, while the residual fear gas slowly cleared from the chamber. "Sir," Veltara said quietly, "I believe we may need to reconsider our approach to human interrogation." Zekthara's tentacles drooped in defeat. "Contact the research division. We need to know everything about human homeworld atmospheric conditions. Everything." As the gas finally cleared completely, Marcus looked up at the observation window with genuine appreciation. "Thanks for that. I know you were probably trying to scare me or whatever, but honestly, that was the most comfortable I've felt since you guys picked me up." "Any chance you could tell me what that compound was? I might want to see if I can synthesize some for my ship's air freshener system." The emergency council meeting convened within hours of the interrogation incident. Representatives from 7 different species sat around the curved conference table, their various breathing apparatus and environmental suits creating a symphony of mechanical sounds. The holographic display at the center showed Marcus Chen's bioscan results, along with atmospheric readings from Earth. Admiral Kethran of the Hegemony Fleet adjusted his vocal translator with one of his 6 manipulator arms. "Explain to me again how your most advanced psychological weapon had the opposite effect on this human." Commander Zekthara's skin flushed through several colors of embarrassment before settling on a pale blue. "The compound designed to induce terror appeared to trigger nostalgic responses instead. The human claimed it reminded him of his homeworld." Dr. Yixnal, the Council's leading xenobiologist, extended her sensory stalks toward the holographic display. Her species had evolved on a pristine world with perfectly balanced atmospheric conditions. The idea of thriving in toxic environments was nearly incomprehensible to her. "These readings cannot be accurate," she insisted, manipulating the display to show Earth's atmospheric composition. "Carbon dioxide levels that would cause respiratory distress in most species, trace amounts of industrial compounds that register as toxic, and background radiation levels that should require protective equipment. And yet, interjected science counselor Mordeth, his cybernetic implants whirring softly, the humans not only survive in these conditions but appear to require them for optimal psychological function. The recording of Marcus's interrogation played once more on the central display. The assembled representatives watched in uncomfortable silence as the human breathed deeply of what should have been a terrifying chemical weapon and declared it smelled like home. "There's more," Zekathara continued reluctantly. "We've analyzed the atmospheric data from human colonies. They actively seek out worlds with environmental challenges that most species would classify as hostile. High radiation, unstable weather patterns, aggressive native flora and fauna. They seem to prefer these conditions to peaceful, stable environments." Fleet Coordinator Vashati leaned forward, her crystalline form refracting the room's light into prismatic patterns. "Are you suggesting that our standard intimidation and psychological warfare techniques are not only ineffective against humans, but may actually make them more comfortable?" "The implications are deeply troubling," admitted Zekathara. "If their baseline for normal includes what we consider extreme stress conditions, then our understanding of human psychology may be fundamentally flawed." Dr. Yixnal manipulated the display to show comparative data from other species. "Look at these neural response patterns. When exposed to mild toxins, most species show immediate stress indicators: elevated heart rate, hormonal changes, heightened alertness. The human samples show the opposite: decreased stress hormones, relaxed neural activity, improved mood indicators." "It's as if," mused Mordeth, "they have evolved to find comfort in what other species would consider dangerous or unpleasant conditions." The discussion was interrupted by an urgent chime from the communication system. The image of Lieutenant Hexara appeared in the display, his expression conveying barely controlled panic, despite the limitations of the translation matrix. "Council members, we have a situation. The human prisoner has been interacting with our detention facility staff." Admiral Kethron's primary eyes focused intently. "Explain." "He's been offering what he calls helpful suggestions about facility management. The maintenance crew found him instructing them on more efficient ways to handle the waste recycling system. He claimed the current process was adorably overcomplicated and showed them how to increase efficiency by 30%. Uncomfortable silence filled the council chamber. "Furthermore," Hexara continued, "he has somehow befriended Guard Captain Slicksoth. They have been discussing what the human refers to as workplace safety and environmental hazard management. Captain Slicksoth reports that the human's suggestions have made his duties significantly easier." Dr. Yixnal's sensory stalks drooped. "He's treating our maximum security detention facility as a consulting opportunity?" "It gets worse," Hexara admitted. "He asked to speak with facility engineering because he noticed what he called minor design flaws in our atmospheric recycling system. When told that our systems are state-of-the-art Vorthak engineering, he responded by saying that was cute, and that human civilian systems could teach us a few things about efficiency." The council members exchanged glances that conveyed species-specific expressions of dismay. "Show him in," Admiral Kethron commanded. The image switched to a view of the detention center's main corridor. Marcus walked alongside two guards, his restraints having been removed at his own suggestion after he pointed out that they were preventing him from properly demonstrating the ergonomic issues with the facility's door controls. "The thing is," Marcus was explaining to one of the guards, "you're making this way more complicated than it needs to be. Back home, we'd handle this kind of security with maybe a quarter of the personnel you're using and half the energy consumption." The guard, a heavily armored Krolik warrior whose species was known for their military efficiency, nodded thoughtfully. "Your methods intrigue me, human. Tell me more about these efficiency improvements." "Well, for starters, you've got way too many redundant monitoring systems. I counted at least 6 different sensors watching the same corridor section. A decent motion detector and maybe some basic cameras would do the same job with 90% less maintenance overhead. As they entered the council chamber, Marcus looked around with the same casual interest he had shown during his interrogation. Wow, this is a nice setup. Though I have to ask, is all that environmental equipment really necessary? I'm seeing backup systems for backup systems. Kind of overkill, don't you think? Admiral Kethron struggled to maintain his composure. Human Marcus Chen, you are accused of espionage against the Vorthak hegemony. Marcus looked genuinely surprised. Espionage? I told you guys I'm just a cargo hauler. Though I have to say, if I were a spy, I'd be pretty impressed by how easy it was to get detailed information about your security systems just by being helpful. The implications of this statement sent a collective shudder through the council. You obtained classified information through casual conversation? Dr. Yixnall asked weakly. Not intentionally, Marcus replied. Your people are just really friendly and talkative. Plus, they seem genuinely interested in improving their work efficiency. Can't say I blame them. Some of your procedures are pretty labor-intensive. Counselor Mordeth leaned forward, his cybernetic eye focusing intently. You have been imprisoned, subjected to psychological warfare and accused of crimes against the state. Yet you respond by offering productivity improvements. Marcus shrugged. Look, I don't know what you think I did, but while I'm here, might as well be useful, right? Besides, your detention facility has some serious ventilation issues. The air circulation in my cell is terrible. If you're going to hold people there, you should at least meet basic habitability standards. Basic habitability standards? Fleet Coordinator Vashati's crystalline form dimmed slightly. Yeah, proper airflow, decent lighting, maybe some background noise to help with sleep. Right now it's too quiet and the air is too clean. Makes it hard to relax. Dr. Yixnall consulted her datapad frantically. The detention facility maintains atmosphere purity levels of 99.7%, with complete filtration of all potentially harmful compounds. Marcus nodded sympathetically. Right, that's the problem. All that filtering strips out the trace elements that make air feel natural. It's like trying to sleep in a sterile laboratory. No wonder your prisoners get agitated. Our prisoners get agitated because they are imprisoned, Admiral Kethran pointed out. Well, sure, that too, Marcus agreed. But environmental factors play a big role in psychological comfort. Back on Earth, we learned that overly sterile environments can actually increase stress levels. A little bit of atmospheric variety helps people stay calm. The council members stared at him in collective bewilderment. You're suggesting, Counselor Mordeth said slowly, that our detention facility would be more effective if we made the environmental conditions worse? Not worse, Marcus corrected. More natural. A little variation in temperature, some background atmospheric complexity, maybe a bit of white noise from the ventilation system. Creates a more psychologically stable environment. Commander Zekthera's tentacles writhed with confusion. The human is proposing that we deliberately degrade our facility's environmental controls to improve prisoner compliance? Think of it as optimization rather than degradation, Marcus suggested helpfully. You'd probably save a lot of energy on all that excessive air filtration, and your prisoners would be calmer and easier to manage. Science Counselor Mordeth's cybernetic implants whirred as he processed this information. This contradicts everything we know about detention facility management. Maybe that's because most of your prisoners aren't human, Marcus pointed out. Different species, different environmental needs. What feels sterile and uncomfortable to me might be perfectly fine for someone else. The logical simplicity of this statement hit the council like a cargo hauler traveling at full impulse power. Dr. Yixnall's voice was barely above a whisper. We have been applying universal standards to species-specific requirements. Happens all the time, Marcus said cheerfully. Easy mistake to make when you're dealing with lots of different peoples. The trick is staying flexible and adjusting your approach based on who you're working with. Admiral Kethron realized that this conversation had fundamentally shifted from an interrogation to what the human would probably call a consulting session. "Human Marcus Chen," he said formally, "what exactly do you do for a living?" Marcus looked slightly embarrassed. "Well, cargo hauling is sort of a side job. My main work is environmental systems consulting. I help colonies optimize their life support systems for different species requirements. It's actually pretty interesting work. You'd be amazed how many settlement failures come down to getting the atmospheric balance wrong." The council chamber fell completely silent, except for the mechanical sounds of various breathing apparatus. "Environmental systems consulting," Fleet Coordinator Vashati repeated slowly. "Yeah. Spent the last 15 years working with mixed species colonies, figuring out how to make environments that work for everyone. It's all about finding the sweet spot between different physiological needs." Commander Zekthara felt his worldview restructuring itself in real time. "And the cargo hauling? Oh, that's just how I get around to different job sites. Cheaper to own my own transport than book passage on commercial flights." Admiral Kethran's 6 manipulator arms moved in what his species considered a gesture of profound resignation. "Mr. Chen, I believe there has been a significant misunderstanding." 3 months later, Marcus Chen stood in the newly renovated command center of Hegemony Station Kappa 7, watching through the massive viewport as ships from dozens of species docked at the facility's expanded ports. The station had become something unprecedented in galactic politics, a truly multi-species cooperation hub that actually worked. "The efficiency improvements continue to exceed projections," reported Chief Engineer Grixmol, the former interrogation specialist who had discovered an unexpected talent for environmental systems management. "Atmospheric processing costs are down 47%, while life support satisfaction ratings have increased across all species demographics." Marcus nodded, making notes on his data pad. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Once the Vorthak leadership realized they had accidentally captured one of the galaxy's leading experts in multi-species environmental design, the entire dynamic had shifted from imprisonment to enthusiastic collaboration. "The key breakthrough," Marcus explained to the assembled engineering team, was realizing that optimal conditions aren't universal. Each species has evolved comfort zones that reflect their home-world experiences. Instead of trying to create one perfect environment, we design flexible systems that can maintain different conditions in different sections. Dr. Yixnall, who had become something of a protege in xenobiological environmental science, gestured toward a holographic display showing the station's atmospheric zones. "The human approach of embracing environmental variety rather than eliminating it has revolutionized our thinking about space habitat design." The display showed a complex but elegant system of interconnected zones. Crystalline beings like Fleet Coordinator Vashti could enjoy their preferred low-humidity, high-light environments, while moisture-loving species like the aquatic collective could thrive in their preferred high-humidity zones. The human sections maintained what other species had learned to call comfortable chaos, atmospheric conditions that would have been considered suboptimal by traditional standards, but that promoted psychological well-being for humans. "The psychological benefits have been as significant as the physiological ones," observed Counselor Mordeth, his cybernetic implants interfacing directly with the station's monitoring systems. "Stress-related incidents have decreased by 73% since implementation of species-specific environmental protocols." Marcus smiled, an expression that no longer caused alarm among his alien colleagues. "Turns out that when people feel comfortable in their environment, they're more cooperative and productive. Who would have thought?" Admiral Kethran approached the group, his 6 arms carrying data pads containing reports from various hegemony installations. Mr. Chen, the Council has approved the expansion of your environmental consultation program to 17 additional stations. The economic benefits alone justify the investment, but the diplomatic advantages are beyond quantification. The success had been almost embarrassingly rapid. Within weeks of Marcus's release and official hiring as Chief Environmental Systems Consultant, word had spread throughout the galactic community about the revolutionary improvements at hegemony stations. Diplomatic incidents had declined sharply as representatives from different species found themselves able to function comfortably during extended negotiations. There's been an unexpected development, Admiral Kethran continued. The Andromedan Trade Consortium has requested human consultation for their new expansion project. They specifically asked for the humans who make impossible environments work. Marcus looked up from his datapad with interest. The consortium? They've been isolationist for centuries. What changed their minds? Ambassador Zelthara from the Centauri Collective spoke with them about our recent trade negotiations, explained Dr. Yixnall. She mentioned that the talks proceeded more smoothly than any in recorded history and attributed the success to optimal environmental conditions for all participants. The irony wasn't lost on any of them. The same techniques that had made Marcus immune to psychological warfare had made him an ideal diplomatic facilitator. His ability to find comfort in challenging conditions, combined with his professional expertise in environmental systems, had created solutions that benefited everyone involved. The humans' approach to problem-solving continues to surprise us, admitted Chief Engineer Grix Mole. Where we see obstacles, they see optimization opportunities. Marcus chuckled. It's not magic. We just grew up having to make the best of imperfect situations. When your homeworld tries to kill you on a regular basis, you get pretty good at finding creative solutions. The observation deck's main doors opened, and Guard Captain Slicksoth entered with a group of visitors, a delegation from the Tau Ceti system that had requested a tour of the facility. The captain, who had become Marcus's unofficial co-instructor in practical environmental management, gestured toward the various atmospheric zones. As you can see, the human-designed system maintains optimal conditions for 17 different species classifications simultaneously, Slicksoth explained to the visitors. Energy consumption is actually lower than our previous single-environment system due to improved efficiency algorithms. One of the Tau Ceti delegates, a methane-breathing species that required specialized containment suits in most galactic facilities, looked around in apparent amazement. You're saying we could exist here without full environmental suits? In the designated methane-compatible zones, absolutely, Marcus replied. We maintain proper atmospheric composition, pressure, and temperature ranges for your species' comfort. You'd probably still want breathing apparatus for the transition zones, but in your designated areas, you could be completely comfortable. The implications of this simple statement sent ripples through the delegation. For centuries, methane-breathing species had been effectively excluded from most galactic politics due to the complexity of environmental requirements. The possibility of truly inclusive space habitats represented a fundamental shift in interspecies relations. The human philosophy, Dr. Yixnall explained, embraces complexity rather than simplification. Instead of trying to create one environment that everyone can tolerate, they design systems that allow everyone to thrive. As the tour continued, Marcus found himself reflecting on the strange path that had brought him here. 3 months ago, he had been a simple contractor hauling environmental equipment to outer rim colonies. Now he was apparently spearheading a revolution in galactic diplomacy, all because he had grown up breathing air that other species considered toxic. Mr. Chen, Admiral Kethran approached privately as the delegation moved to examine the hydroponic systems. I must ask, was any of this intentional? Your capture, the interrogation incident, the subsequent revelations about human environmental adaptability? Marcus considered the question seriously. Honestly? No. I really was just making a cargo run when your patrol picked me up. Everything else just happened because I tried to be helpful. The implications trouble me, the Admiral admitted. If one human consultant can inadvertently revolutionize our understanding of interspecies cooperation, what else might we be misunderstanding about your species? Probably a lot, Marcus said cheerfully. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Misunderstandings are just opportunities to learn something new. The Admiral's manipulator arms moved in what Marcus had learned was an expression of rueful acceptance. Your species' optimism is perhaps their most dangerous weapon. Not dangerous, Marcus corrected, just different. And sometimes different is exactly what you need to solve problems you didn't even know you had. As if to emphasize his point, an announcement echoed through the station's communication system. Attention all personnel. The first-ever Galactic Multi-Species Environmental Summit has been officially scheduled for Hegemony Station Kappa 7. Delegates from 43 species have confirmed attendance. Marcus grinned at the Admiral's expression of barely controlled panic. Don't worry, we'll make it work. We've got 3 months to design environmental systems for 43 different species requirements. Should be fun. Fun, Admiral Kethron repeated weakly. Trust me, Marcus said, turning back to his datapad full of atmospheric specifications and environmental requirements. The hard part was figuring out that it was possible. Now it's just engineering. As the Admiral walked away, probably to begin the enormous logistical planning that such an event would require, Marcus looked out at the busy docking bays filled with ships from across the galaxy. Each vessel represented different environmental needs, different evolutionary paths, different ways of solving the fundamental problem of staying alive in a hostile universe. The irony was perfect. Humanity's greatest strength in galactic politics wasn't their technology or their military capability or their strategic thinking. It was their ability to feel at home in places that would terrify anyone else. Marcus breathed deeply of the station's carefully maintained atmospheric blend, still not quite the familiar industrial tang of Earth's air, but closer than he had expected when this adventure began. In the distance, he could see construction crews working on the new expansion modules that would house the upcoming summit. 43 species, each with their own environmental needs, their own definition of comfortable, their own way of turning hostile conditions into home. Should be fun, he repeated to himself, and meant it completely. 3 months from now, when the Galactic Multi-Species Environmental Summit convened successfully and ushered in a new era of truly inclusive interstellar cooperation, historians would mark it as a turning point in galactic civilization. They would probably never mention that it all started because a human cargo pilot had smelled fear gas and thought it reminded him of home. But Marcus would remember. And sometimes, late at night when the station was quiet and the atmospheric recycling systems hummed with the familiar sounds of complex machinery working hard to keep everyone alive, he would smile and think about his mother's old joke about apocalypse preparation. She had been right, as it turned out. When the galaxy needed someone to make impossible environments work, a kid from the industrial zones of Earth had been exactly the right person for the job. The future was going to be very interesting indeed.